And here come the candidates of 2014. Good morning, everyone. I am Aaron Merrill, and as representative of the students, faculty, and staff here at the Williston Central School, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to serve as moderator of the 2014 Williston Central School Candidate Forum. On behalf of our principals, Walter Nardelli and Jackie Parks, the Social Studies Candidate Forum Committee, and the 7th and 8th grade students of Williston, we gratefully welcome all of the candidates who have volunteered time from their personal lives, their busy campaigns, and their positions of public service to be with us here today. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished guests by showing our appreciation with a resounding round of applause. It is our established tradition that we begin our candidate forum with the Pledge of Allegiance. To lead us in this patriotic ceremony, 2 students have been selected from the ranks of this year's Williston Central School upper houses. Bearing the flag of the United States of America is James Schmidt. He will be joined by pledge leader Nicole Eaton. Would you please all stand and join us in the salute? To our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, and Williston students, it is time to begin our candidate forum. The format will consist of 3 rounds of questions presented by selected students from the 4 upper houses of Williston Central. Answers from the candidates will be limited to 1.5 minutes each. Our dedicated timekeepers, Jimmy and Caitlin, will be responsible for keeping the candidates within the time limits. All questions have been prepared by the students in the 7th and 8th grades of the middle school. In the 4th round, each candidate will be given the opportunity to outline their personal goals for the position that they seek and present their vision for a prosperous and peaceful world for the students seated before them. The time limit for the final round will be announced at the end of round 3. I'd also like to note that this year you have glasses of water and not plastic bottles. We have some students who've been studying and working on a water project and have suggested that we not use bottled water this year. To begin our forum, we ask that each candidate, starting with this side of the table, introduce themselves and indicate which office they seek.
My name is Phil Scott, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor, and I've been Lieutenant Governor for the last 4 years. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hi, Williston Central. This is Jim Condos. I'm the Secretary of State. I've been the Secretary of State for 4 years.
Good morning. I'm Pete Shumlin. I am running for the office of governor, and I've been your governor for the last 4 years.
Hi, I'm Attorney General Bill Sorrell, and let me just say this school rocks. You all do such a great job organizing this, and it's a pleasure for me to be here again. I've been the Attorney General for 17 years, and I hope to continue to serve after the election this November. Thanks much.
I'm Dean Corrin. I'm from Burlington, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Milne. I'm running for 8th grade class president. Governor of Vermont, and it's great to be here. Look forward to some good questions, and congratulations on a great morning.
Hello, I'm Beth Pierce. I'm the state treasurer. I've been state treasurer for 4 years, and I want to thank you very much for being here today and for the great posters. Good work.
Good morning. I'm Peter Welch, and I'm Vermont's representative in the United States House of Representatives. I've been that for 8 years, and I'm really delighted to be here again with you. It's always a great, great program for all of us. Thank you.
The first question in round one will be presented by Zana to Phil Scott.
How does your buy local, it's not just for hippies anymore, help the communities within Vermont as well as the families buying locally made products?
Well, thank you very much, Zana. This started as more of an awareness campaign. I grew up in Barrie, and it was kind of a blue-collar town, and we're housed next to Goddard College. And there was a lot of, I think, a lot of buying local in terms of going to family farms and the farmers markets and so forth. And I think a lot of people in Barrie didn't see the wisdom in doing that. So I thought we needed to do better in terms of buying local, buying from each other. And I've been in business for 30 years, and many of you go to your local businesses when you have school projects, you want to go someplace raising money for charitable causes, and you ask some of these businesses for their dollars to contribute. And then at times, you don't see the connection in trying to do business with them at the same time. So when you go online and you buy from Amazon and you're not buying from your local businesses, it hurts the economy in a lot of different ways. So I've been very proud to go to parades, promote this. I talked to some of my hippie friends to be sure that I didn't offend them in any way when I did this, but it's more of a tongue-in-cheek type of a campaign. And I go to parades and we give out stickers and we really try and promote buying local, because it really is more powerful when we can take care of each other, take care of our environment, take care of buying local, cutting down on the waste stream, and doing what's best for Vermont. And I think it'll make us more independent in our future and more self-sufficient. So I would encourage you to
You're out of time.
yeah, thank you very much. Buy local.
Our next question will be presented by Sophie for Beth Pierce.
Last year, $9.6 million in unclaimed financial property was found by the State Treasurer's Office. During the last decade, the State Treasurer returned 55% of the unclaimed financial property back to its owners. What will you do to increase the percentage of unclaimed financial property returned to Vermonters?
Well, first, thank you very much, and I'll try to pay attention to the bell now that I got the routine down here. Unclaimed property is material that, property that might have been a bank account that someone forgot about, or stock that they didn't remember that they had, utility deposits, and the people that the company that might have that, for instance, or credit from a retail store, they don't get to keep that. They send it to the state, and then we return that money to people so that you can continue to get your property. Now, we do collect about 9.6 million. We actually have 64 million right now in unclaimed property. And you should check out our website, vermonttreasurer.gov. There's a section on unclaimed property. You can look by town, you can look by name, and see if some of your relatives, your parents or your cousins or folks have some money in there, and check that out, because we want to get that money back to people. This is about consumer protection. The companies don't get to keep those dollars. We turn around as a state and try to help reunite you with the money that's rightfully yours. That is a very good number. You've obviously checked out our website. It's 55% is the 10% 10-year average. We're up closer to 60% now. We keep trying to find new ways to do it. We're at the Champlain Valley Fair and at a number of other places to do that. And we work with town clerks to get the names out to folks as well. Thank you.
Our next question will be presented by Jessica for Peter Welch.
Affordable health care is important to those who can't buy it, but how is this plan going to financially enhance our economy?
Well, that's a great question, and there's lots of ways. You know, your moms and dads, by and large, probably take care of your health care, and you're healthy, but every once in a while, somebody gets sick. If your moms and dads have good health care, and they're able to make certain that you get the health care that you need, that's going to help them, and it's going to help you. Another thing that's really good about affordable health care for the economy is that some folks, before we had health care, what happened with a lot of people is if they had what's called a pre-existing condition, if you're born with something, you'd be denied getting access to health care, and it could bankrupt your parents. Or it would really spike the premiums. That's what the employer pays to get you health care. It would spike those premiums for everybody who worked there. So by having affordable health care, it helps our employers and it helps your moms and dads. You know, another thing about affordable health care, sometimes folks who had health care worked in a job and they had an opportunity to go to another job, but they couldn't bring their health care with them. So that meant people were stuck in a job that they no longer wanted and couldn't sometimes take a job that might be more suitable to their talents or their aspirations. So that affordable health care includes that ability to go from one job to a new job that might be better. It might be something that really excites you. So this is really about the economy and about security. Thank you.
Our next question will be presented by Reagan for Jim Condos.
I noticed on your website that you are committed to strong campaign finance laws. In 2014, a new campaign finance bill was signed into law stating a candidate may accept $6,000 from a political committee. If you can make further changes to campaign finance reform, what would they be and why?
Thank you, Regan. Yeah, campaign finance is really important for all of us because it allows for transparency so that people, the citizens of Vermont, know exactly where the money is coming from that we as candidates use to, that we collect and then use to run our campaigns. So transparency clearly is the top thing for us. Statewide candidates currently, in the new law, the statewide candidates can accept up to $4,000 next year. Right now, the current law says $2,000. I actually argued before the legislature last year to keep it at $2,000, with the exception of the governor's race, which I think is a little bit of a different race altogether at this point. Further, I also argued that the legislature, and what I would really like to see is the legislature pass a change to the campaign finance law that would require us, just like the federal government does for federal contributions to candidates, to require corporate or employer information. Disclosure is the key to campaign finance, and that's what we have to continue to go down the road of trying to improve and enhance and strengthen as we go forward. I do believe that both statewide and legislative candidates ought to file a financial disclosure as well.
The next question will be presented by Alex for Scott Milne.
Mr. Milne, you said on your website that you are going to make the economy a reason to consider when people decide whether to move to Vermont or not. How are you planning to execute that other than by creating new jobs?
Thank you, Alex. I think that you folks here in Chittenden County and Williston are lucky. You're in one of the better socioeconomic parts of Vermont in which to be prosperous. I think there's some pretty good data out there that per pupil spending, Vermont spends a lot of money per pupil for students, and we have great schools, and there's no denying that. If you look across the country, and I think what's important as you're young people thinking about how to be engaged and make a difference in society is to make sure that you want to have your beliefs and you want to be motivated by what's in your heart, but you really also want to make sure you're using facts and data to back up where you're going to go and make sure you're going in the right direction. What we see across the country is the greatest indicator of educational success is not so much coming from a relatively prosperous community like Chittenden County is. Is more the prosperity of your family and your community than the amount of spending per student. So as we look forward to revitalizing the economy in Vermont, beyond creating jobs, what we really need to do is focus fundamentally on our education system, make sure that kids that come from backgrounds that are not as well off as I would expect many of you are, that they are able to be successful and be great contributors to our economy. Thank you for only giving me one bell.
The next question will be presented by Sophie B. for William Sorrell.
My family's property is being threatened with eminent domain for the Addison County Natural Gas Pipeline Project. Do you think it is appropriate for Vermont landowners to lose their property rights to service a national corporation based in New York?
Sophie, I'm sorry to hear that your family's property might be impacted by this project. But I want to make clear that eminent domain is not just simply an out-of-state corporation or an in-state corporation deciding it needs some property and automatically gets to force you to sell it. Rather, eminent domain is a legal process whereby it's determined whether the public benefit of a project is enough to sort of outweigh the private property interests of the properties affected. And the largest eminent domain proceeding in the history of this state was when I was about your age, and our interstate highways, Interstate 89 and 91, well more than 100 miles of property were condemned for the public benefit of having the interstate highway system. So our public service department, which represents public interests on utility issues, will take a position on any project that might be the subject of eminent domain, and then, like the court, independent, neutral court that makes the decision as to whether the project, the public benefit, outweighs the personal private property interest is our public service board with the ability to appeal their decision. So it's unfortunate for some of those whose properties are affected, but it will only happen if the public good outweighs the private property interests.
Our next question will be presented by Zana for Dean Corin.
What key attributes do you believe are most important in developing an affordable renewable energy system for Vermont?
Thank you for that great question. That's the area in which I work. Renewable energy is my business. We develop, in my small company, underwater turbines that really don't have any applicability in Vermont, but are in rivers and oceans. But that's only one piece of a very large puzzle. There are two basic reasons why we need to move towards renewable energy in Vermont. One is economic, because we need a sustainable supply of energy that we can count on and pay for here rather than exporting hundreds of millions and billions of dollars a year to buy fuels, to power our cars, to heat our homes from out of state. And we're on the track to doing that, and we're going to do more and more of that. The state now has a target of 90% by 2050 for renewable power, and we're going to meet those targets, and we can actually accelerate beyond those targets. When we look at the different attributes, there are economic attributes and there are environmental attributes. Every energy use, every energy source has impacts. Nothing is perfectly green, but we can analyze all the inputs and outputs of those energy uses and really judge them compared to each other. We can also clearly judge the economics of them so we can afford to use them. We have older sources of power, coal and nuclear, that we're phasing out, and we're moving more towards renewables that are now much more cost effective and sustainable for the long term. Thank you very much.
When we started to organize our forum, we invited Governor Shumlin to come, and he let us know well ahead of time that he wasn't going to be able to stay for the entire forum, but he really wanted to be here for the students, so we're going to give the governor a minute and a half to address the students directly right now.
Hey, thank you so much, and I apologize to all of you for having to leave early. I'm actually meeting with the EPA administrator, with Senator Leahy, about how to clean up our lake. You all seen blue-green algae and the rest of the challenge we're having. We're on it, and we've got to do better. so I apologize for having to go early. I don't want to talk about me and being governor. I want to talk about you. As I look around this room and I see so much potential for Vermont, I want to urge you to go as far as you possibly can in school beyond high school. I think I'm the first governor since Dean Davis, which was a long, long time ago, who was actually born and raised in the state. And when I graduated from high school, you could actually do pretty well in Vermont with a high school degree, and many of my peers did. I would say that today, those days are over. If you don't go beyond high school, you are sentencing yourself to a low-wage job for life in almost all likelihood. So, one reason that we focus so hard on having Williston Central be one of the best schools in the country and our public school system being the best that you can have is that we know that if we can get you excited about learning, you'll get beyond high school, hopefully go to college, if not get great technical training, graduate degree, whatever, and come back and live and thrive and work in Vermont, which I think is the best state in the country to do that. Now listen, when you hear people like me say that, you probably think, wow, governor's saying that. He was probably a really good student, and he probably did really well in school, and that's how he became governor. I've got to dissuade you from that notion. I was one of the worst students in school. I am dyslexic. I had a terrible time learning how to read, and school was misery for me. So I want to speak for a second to all of you that learn differently, that don't do as well in school as some of your peers, and who wish that you did better. Listen, if I could, in the end, become a good student after lots of trials and tribulations and plenty of time in a principal's office, you can too. I often say, if you could teach Pete Shumlin to be a good student, which eventually happened, anyone can be a good student. What I learned from that struggle was that if you work harder, if you try harder, if you push through it, if you don't lose your self-confidence but you believe in yourself, you can do it. So I'm saying to all of you, regardless of how you learn, regardless of how easy or difficult it is, you are our future. We need you. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country right now. I talk to job creators every day who say, hey, we need trained workforce. We need trained workers to do the jobs we have. So every one of you, promise me this. You will work as hard as you can, get as far as you can in school, push yourselves to excel, and stay right here and work when you're all done in the best state in the nation. It's a privilege to be your governor. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for having this forum, and I apologize for having to scoot out. But you are our future, and we're with you all the way.
We're going to begin round two now. Round two's first question will be asked by Chase for Scott Milne.
Mr. Milne, even though I'm too young to vote now, what are your plans for job creation to stop all the young people from leaving the state of Vermont after they finish their education, if you are elected governor?
Thanks for the question, Chase. A couple things, I guess, when I get into this race. One thing I promised people is I would listen before I act. I've spent a lot of time over the last few months going around to a few schools, but to a lot of people in their homes or in their businesses or in parking lots or county fairs and things, just to learn what is important to people. Another thing I promised people is that I'll be a full-time governor. I think that as governor, it's very easy to get distracted and find things around the country to fly around and talk to other people about. And I think sometimes, particularly when we have an economy, and again, as I said earlier, Chittenden County is a little bit different than a lot of Vermont right now. It's, in a way, there's two Vermonts. There's Chittenden County and to a lesser degree, Orleans County that have job growth. The rest of Vermont, every other county in Vermont has not seen job growth in the last 5 years. So if we have an economy where there is no job growth, we have an economy and a state where it's going to be less likely for you folks to be able to optimistically look forward to getting out of college and raising your family here. It's going to be more difficult for your parents or your grandparents to look forward to optimistically retiring in Vermont and looking forward to having you and your families here. So there's a lot of work to do. It begins with a restructuring of our education system, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to hearing from you folks about over the next couple of weeks and after January 1st, and I'll try not to get to 3 bells on the next one. Thank you.
The next question will be presented by Sophie for Jim Condos. Sophie B.
As
I'm sorry,
Secretary.
Dean. Okay.
What?
It's okay. Go ahead. We'll get.
As Secretary of State, your office oversees the state archives. What does Vermont keep in the archives, and why are those artifacts important for the state of Vermont?
Thanks, Sophie. Just as a little reminder, because many of you may not know it, but one of your classmates, Jack Zawalik, his mother is the state archivist. She runs the state archives, and she's responsible for making sure that all those documents that we have and digital records are kept forever and protected. What we have in the State House, and the first time after I got elected, I went to the state archives, and the former state archivist, Greg Sanford, took me into the vault, and he handed me a document that was in plastic. And when I looked at it, I literally started to shake because it was the Vermont Constitution, the original Vermont Constitution from back in the 1700s. Those are the kinds of documents that we have in the state archives. We have the original Bill of Rights that were signed by the state of Vermont and sent back to Washington when the country approved the Bill of Rights. We had, for post-Hurricane Irene, when there were a lot of roads and bridges that were moved or destroyed, we had all the old maps start going back to 1927 and beyond, where the transportation department and the construction companies that were working to rebuild Vermont came to us to look for documents. We also have birth and death certificates as well.
And the next question will be presented by Reagan for Dean Corrin.
Your website posts a daily price gauge update with gas prices in Burlington versus Rutland. Can you explain this discrepancy in prices? Why is this one of your top priorities?
Thank you, Reagan. Thanks for doing the research. This is an example of something I think the Lieutenant Governor can do to help Vermont. In this particular case, in this region, the northwest corner of the state of Vermont, there's a price discrepancy from other areas in Vermont, and we know over time that sometimes that goes away, so it doesn't always have to be there. And one of the potential problems is that there are only 4 distributors at the wholesale level of these kinds of fuels. And there was a bill in the House which never got a hearing in the Senate, and as President of the Senate, as Lieutenant Governor, I would be able to help make sure it does get a hearing in the Senate. And I held a press conference to talk about this problem, a very solvable problem, with the Attorney General, Bill Sorrell. And we pointed out that if we pass this legislation, all it requires is that the distributors give their information, the amount they sell and the price, to the Attorney General so they can look into and see if there are any problems in competition. Probably, simply by sharing that information, the price discrepancy would magically disappear. So by focusing on this problem, as our Senator Bernie Sanders has done in the past, whenever you talk about it publicly, the price differential tends to go away, and we can save the Northwest $20 million a year.
The next question will be presented by Matt for Phil Scott.
Hi. In March 2014, over 50% of Vermont's elementary and high school voted down their school budgets. Your website mentions property tax reform as a main issue. What are your ideas to help reform property tax while supporting Vermont's schools?
Well, thank you very much. Last year's votes were an indication of an overall problem I think Vermonters are facing. I do what's called this Vermont Everyday Jobs Tour. When I became Lieutenant Governor, I decided I wanted to work a few hours in somebody else's shoes. So I've done over 30 jobs throughout Vermont, working in their shoes, working alongside them, from everything from beekeeping to working with the Vermont National Guard to teaching second grade and working for large animal vets and so forth. But the common theme that I'm hearing is this crisis of affordability. And I'm sure your parents you've heard your parents complaining about paying their property taxes and how expensive it is. So what we're facing, though, is property taxes are a major component of that crisis of affordability. We have an aging population. We only have 625,000 people here, and we're losing the category from 25 to 45. That's the people that pay the taxes. That's our workforce. And those are the ones having the families. So the student population is shrinking. And what we have to do is we have to gear up. We have to do things to entice growth in our economy so that we can bring more revenue in and become more efficient in our schools and so forth. So we have a lot of smart people in Montpelier, and I'm sure if we all put our heads together and worked on this crisis of affordability, that it's solvable. But it's going to take all of us pulling in the same direction to do so.
Our next question will be presented by Reagan for William Sorrell.
In your time as Attorney General, you have successfully fought big tobacco from advertising to Vermont school children. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on advertising of electronic cigarettes that appear directly marketed towards teens through social media and television shows.
That's a great question, Reagan. You know, people who are addicted to cigarettes, they're not addicted to tobacco. They're addicted to a chemical that's in tobacco or in cigarettes, nicotine. And e-cigarettes are a new method of delivering nicotine. And they're very helpful for adult smokers who want to quit smoking regular lit cigarettes and still feed their nicotine habit. But that's a cessation device for adult smokers. Our concern is that with flavors like mango and tutti frutti and cotton candy, that e-cigarettes are just an attempt to hook the likes of you and make you addicted to nicotine. And the advertising we're seeing with movie stars and people driving cool, fast cars and everything, and with an e-cigarette, it's to make you think that you'll be cooler if you take up the e-cigarette habit. Don't go there. Use it as a cessation device for those already hooked on nicotine. You don't want to become addicted to that drug because it's a killer.
Next question will be presented by Lauren for Peter Welch.
On your website, you don't talk a lot about immigration. Where do you stand on this issue, and what do you plan on doing about immigration in America?
You know, we're a nation of immigrants. A lot of the original Vermonters who came here came from other countries. We built our industrial economy with immigrants from Europe and all parts of the world. And we need to have an immigration opportunity for folks who want to come here and help build our country. A lot of the folks who are immigrants, some may be your parents or your grandparents, they were hard workers who've really contributed to building this country. We've got to pass an immigration bill in Congress. The Senate, with Senator Leahy and Senator Sanders, they passed one. If the Speaker of the House, that's the person who has the authority to put a bill on the floor, if the Speaker of the House put that Senate-passed immigration bill on the floor, we'd pass it. And it would give some security to a lot of people. There's some children and young people who were brought here by their parents. They were born in America, and they can't be citizens. We've got to correct that. There are a lot of immigrant workers who are working hard on our farms, helping our farmers milk the cows. We've got to provide some ability for them to be here and for our farmers to have them here in a legal way. So I'm a strong, strong supporter of Congress having a responsible plan to have immigration reform. It's really vital, and a confident country is going to find a way to treat immigrants fairly.
Our next question will be presented by Ryan for Beth Pierce.
Good morning. Do you think that the state is spending too much money each year or too little? How should the state determine the optimal amount to spend?
Thanks, Ryan. That's a good question. But part of that issue is decided by the legislature and the governor through the budget process. What the treasurer's office tries to do is maximize those dollars and use those dollars efficiently so that we can make the most of those dollars for the taxpayer and lower the cost of financing. Folks have talked a little bit about local investment. We're doing more local investment in the treasurer's office. We created a local investment advisory committee, and a bill passed last year called 10% in Vermont to keep our dollars here and invest those here in energy financing, one of the areas that we're doing it, so we're creating jobs with it and getting local investment at the same time. October 22nd, we're going to be having a meeting with folks on housing and energy to talk about ways that we can do more treasury investment in that. The other way is not to put it on your credit card at home. You know, you don't put everything on your credit card and hope that things are going to get better down the road. It doesn't work that way. You have to be very careful with the state's dollars. We changed the way we pay for teacher health care this past year and took a lot of work with the legislature. But it was about $20 million a year, but the way we were paying for it by putting it in our credit card, it was costing the taxpayers $60 million for putting that on the credit card and not paying your bills on time. By making the changes we did last year, we're going to save the taxpayers over the next 25 years $500 million. And I think that that's the type of thing that we can do in the treasurer's office to stretch those dollars.
For our last round, round 3 of questions, we're going to have a 1-minute time limit to stay within our hour frame for the forum. So our first question for round 3 will be presented by Jessica for Peter Welch.
You said that middle-class families should be able to afford college. How are you going to be able to lower the prices in an efficient way so people can afford it?
Well, you heard the governor, and he's right. You've got to go to college. You've got to work in order to do that. But the cost of college these days, if you go to a private school, can be $60,000 a year. You know, the average Vermont family makes $50,000 or less. So the math doesn't work out. And it's gotten a lot worse, and it can't get worse if you're going to be able to afford it. So there's 3 things we need to do. One, we've got to have the federal government supporting grants and loans to kids and families that want to go to college. 2, we've got to work with our college administrators to really find ways to lower the cost of college so the tuition increases just don't keep skyrocketing. And then 3rd, we've got to let parents and students who have loans that they have to repay, we've got to let them renegotiate those loans so that they can pay at a lower interest rate. You know, the federal government borrows at 2.5%, parents are paying 7%. Let's let the parents go at that lower rate.
Our next question will be presented by Matt for William Sorrell.
What are your ideas to ensure that large companies cannot repeal Vermont's GMO labeling laws so that Vermonters can have a choice about what they put into their bodies?
Thanks, Matt. Vermont's GMO labeling law is just to allow consumers, buyers, to compare products and make a decision on what they want to buy. So you look at 2 cans of soup and you take a look at the salt content or the sugar content or the fat content, and you make a decision of which way you want to go. That's what our labeling law is all about, is to let consumers make informed choices. Big companies are fighting our law. They think that Vermont should not be able to force them to disclose whether they have GMOs in their products. But more than 60 countries in the world have mandatory GMO labeling, and we're saying this is just consumer information that right now they have to say about salt and fat content and calories and the like, and that we ought to be able, our public interest, consumer interest in knowing and making choice should trump their position that they can't be forced to disclose what's in their products.
Our next question will be presented by Adam for Scott Milne.
Mr. Milne, if you want to cut school spending, what will you cut? How will it affect students in our school?
Thank you, Adam. Also, usually when Governor Shumlin's out of state, Phil Scott's acting governor. In case you have any Governor Shumlin questions for me afterwards, I'll try to answer them as best I can for you. Just a little joke there, but I guess it wasn't too funny. But on school spending, I've advocated that we need to take a big picture, forest, not the trees, look at the way education is working in Vermont. As I said before, the #1 determinant of educational success for kids is the socioeconomic health of the family and the community. We need to take a serious look at how we're allocating our education dollars. Make sure you folks are prepared, whether you want to go to college or you want to go to a tech center or you want to get into your family business. There's many avenues to be successful contributors to society. It's our job as a state to facilitate that, and getting education costs that are not driving people out of state because of high property taxes is one way of doing that, and it's something that really needs to be a priority.
Next question will be presented by Sophie for Beth Pierce.
Do you have any advice regarding property tax issues facing Vermonters?
Thanks, Sophie. Obviously, property tax is a big issue. We've heard a lot about it today. Education funding is a big issue. The legislature is going to be taking that up over the next session with a lot of leadership from the governor's office on this as well. Our job, again, we don't set tax policy, but we're going to be working with them to look over those cash flows and find ways to create more efficiencies in there. And we look forward to helping with that process from the technical assistance side. But we don't set tax policy, but we can find ways to be more efficient, work with the local bond bank too, and find ways to lower the cost of financing for towns. When they do have to go out to borrow, we need to work to find ways to make that more efficient. During Irene, for instance, towns had to borrow money to make those repairs. And we worked with the local banks and we worked with the bond bank to find ways to lower the cost of financing and to upfront some money from the state, monies they would have received later, so that they could lower the cost of those repairs.
Next question will be presented by Matt for Dean Corrin.
Your website mentions economic and social progress as key issues. IBM is one of the largest employers in the area, and they are looking for a buyer. If you are elected, tell us what is the economic and social incentive for them to stay, or for new owners to buy them out.
Great question. I think a chief role of the Lieutenant Governor can be helping grow businesses in Vermont. You know, most of the businesses that you folks are going to work for or start yourself are starting now or don't even exist yet. When you get out of college, we're going to need small, growing businesses within Vermont that stay in Vermont, and that's the kind of economy that is sustainable, that actually provides the most jobs. IBM has been a great employer because Thomas Watson long ago went skiing in Vermont and fell in love with it, and so they built a plant here and they've been making leading edge chips for a long time, but IBM's going to be getting out of that business. They're going to go into the services business. It's a multinational corporation. The decisions will not be made in Vermont, and Vermont cannot come up, Vermont's not a huge state, and it's not going to come up with enough money to make IBM change that decision. We need to refocus our economic development efforts on those businesses that are growing in Vermont that will really create jobs here.
Next question will be presented by Sophie for Jim Condos.
The Office of Professional Services collects money when certain professionals renew their licenses. What exactly does the state do with these funds?
Great question. The fund for the Office of Professional Regulation is actually self-sustaining. So the office itself oversees 46 professions like vets, nurses, accountants, engineers, nurses, I think I said nurses, barbers, real estate agents, 46 of those kinds of professions. And we have the responsibility of making sure that the licenses that they hold meet the standards for their profession. And so our office has to deal with the administrative side of it for the licensing part. We also investigate complaints from consumers. So when consumers have a complaint against a licensed professional, it comes to that office, and we have to investigate it, and then if necessary, prosecute and discipline that person. And the way the fund is set up is totally self-sustaining. The money stays right in that organization. It pays for the operations.
Our last question of round 3 will be presented by Sophie for Phil Scott.
On your website, you quote John F. Kennedy, "A rising tide lifts all boats," in reference to strengthening Vermont's economy. What will you do as Lieutenant Governor to help Vermont families have the opportunity to prosper?
I've served in the Senate for 10 years before I became Lieutenant Governor, and I served in the minority party. But I always found ways to work together with others to solve problems, whether it was with Jim Condos, Peter Welch, or Peter Shumlin. We all served in the Senate. And I think that if we all agreed that the economy and prosperity were the most important issues facing Vermonters and Vermont families, I'm confident we can make life better for each and every one of us. But we have to do so in a respectful and civil manner and listen to each other, because we don't all have, each individual have all the answers. But collectively, working together, I think we can solve almost anything. And I think that's the point of President Kennedy's quote was, "We need to work together." So thank you very much.
For round 4, we'll give each candidate a minute to make some closing remarks. Our first candidate to speak will be Beth Pierce.
Well, again, thank you very much for the opportunity today. Great questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you in the legislature down the road and working with you. The Treasurer's Office is about protecting taxpayer dollars and being efficient and using those dollars and distributing those dollars and investing those dollars. $5 billion goes through that office every year in terms of inflows and outflows. We also invest about $4 billion of pension funds. We also have the Higher Education Trust Fund, which is used for scholarships by VSAC and the state colleges and UVM. We need to continue to run it efficiently, professionally, and to manage those dollars for the benefit of everyone, and to do the right things in areas of financial literacy, helping people learn the skills to manage their money, and consumer protection with unclaimed property to make sure we get the money out to folks. It's a great place. It's the best job in the state, no offense to all the rest of the folks here. And I'm proud of the staff that we have, proud of the work that we've done with Irene, and proud of the work we're going to continue to do for the future for Vermont.
Peter Welch.
Thank you very much. You know, Washington is a kind of messed up place these days. You know, when I served in a Congress that was regarded by many as one of the most productive in our history, and now I'm part of a Congress that is considered to be about the least productive. And the problem that we face is solvable. But what it requires is that the fact that we have disagreements is a reason to listen rather than to argue. It's a reason to cooperate, not just have confrontation. And you know, a confident person has challenges, but a confident person faces them. A confident country has problems, but a confident country faces them. We need a new energy policy. We need immigration reform. We need to get a tax reform system that's going to help promote growth and prosperity. But that means that Congress members, men and women, Republicans and Democrats, have to spend a lot more time listening and searching for the common ground so we can make steps and move ahead. You can do that in your life. We can do that in our public life. Thank you very much.
Jim Condos. Peter.
Sorry. So, going forward, my office, one of the things that I've been focusing on over the last 4 years has been improving the efficiency and productivity of the office. And in the area of our website, we had an old website, and we now have one of the best websites in state government. So we've completely revamped that. It makes it easier, more transparent, easier for people to access the information that we have, and we have lots of information on that site. In the area of corporations, we have gone, in the area of corporations is where the businesses in this state come to register their business so that they can do business in the state of Vermont. We've now taken that from 0% online to now 95% online. In the area of the Office of Professional Regulation, similar numbers. The licensing portion, we have the 60,000 license holders that have to renew their licenses every 2 years, and we've now been able to change that from 0 to 95%. And we're working right now on the elections IT to protect the integrity of our elections.
Bill Scott.
Congressman Welch mentioned the dysfunction in Washington, and while I agree with him, I also have a tremendous amount of respect for him because he's trying to change that. And I think that's because of our Vermont roots. We treat each other differently here. We treat each other with respect and civility, and I think that that's what leadership is about. And just think about it in your own daily lives. If you treat others the way you want to be treated, we can become a much better place. I urge you to participate. I urge you to get involved. It's not too early. Just a few short years, you're going to be voting as well. And it really does matter. And so these types of forums are so important. But pay attention, because we're talking in Montpelier about your lives and your future. So it does matter. So thanks very much for putting this on today.
William Sorrell.
I have a great job. I get to, as the state's chief law enforcement officer, enforce our laws to try to see that our environment is cleaner and that you and your loved ones are protected from being scammed, from being discriminated against, and being the victims of crime. It's very rewarding work. I'd love to stay in this job if the voters want me. Let me ask you to go home tonight, speak to your parents about what you heard today, encourage them to vote, to speak out, and if any of us, particularly you, would vote for, if you had the vote, I would ask you to encourage your parents to vote for those of us whom you like today. Thank you very much.
Dean Corrin.
I'm running for lieutenant governor because I think we can step up the functionality of that office to deal with some of the major issues that are facing us. We have some really large issues, like the $5 billion we're now spending on health care. But with each of those problems, we have opportunities to have more jobs, cleaner energy, a more sustainable economy. And when I was in the House for 8 years, we worked on a lot of these areas. We pushed forward on efficiency, utility, and a number of other areas with the environment and creating jobs. And I can do that much more effectively in a statewide role, as I did with Bernie Sanders when I went around the state representing the congressman then. And I really want to thank you for your involvement on doing the research, on doing the posters. They're really wonderful, and having us here today, and really do think about these issues in great detail and how we're going to move forward in the future and how you're going to be a part of that. Thanks very much.
Scott Milne.
Thank you, everybody. It's been great to be here with you. Elections are important. Really, in my mind, what's more important than which of any of us happens to get elected this round is what you folks have in your hearts and your minds as you move forward. I would encourage you to believe that you can make a difference. I agree with what Mr. Sorrell said about going home and talking to your parents about government and life. Those of you that don't have two parents at home, I have a little more empathy for you than I might have had a couple months ago. My mom, Marion Milne, died 2 months ago yesterday. My mom, 20 years ago this month, was running for the state legislature as her first time. She was an underdog. She was facing a steep climb. She was handicapped as losing that race. Wasn't given a lot of chance of winning. She did win. Her campaign theme, and I would argue a foundation for her life, which has been inspirational to me, was, "I am naive enough to believe that I can make a difference." What I would ask you all to do is, as you march forward in your lives, get engaged in community, get engaged in politics, believe that you can be naive enough to make a difference. If it takes talking through 3 bells to do what you want to do, I would encourage you to do that without being rude. And I want to just thank you all for being here today and look forward to sharing Vermont with you all in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, students of Williston and distinguished candidates, this has been an exceptionally educational and informative forum. On behalf of Williston Central School and the Social Studies Committee, we wish all the candidates the best in their campaigns, and we again present our most sincere gratitude to all of the candidates for sharing their time and expertise with us here today. Candidates, you're welcome to take the wonderful student-made posters in front of you as a token of our thanks. Let us once again show our appreciation by standing and presenting a final rousing round of applause. Thank you. We hope to see you all once again in 2016.